Well, hello there. It is time to explore the Souls lore once again. In the previous video, we talked about the most vile and evil creatures in the Souls universe. Today, the topic is quite the opposite. Hard times create the greatest heroes, so today we will figure out who are the most heroic and noble characters in these games. I believe there are more than one character who deserves the top spot, so I will not rank the characters this time, but I'm still curious how you guys would rank them, so write it down in the comments and let's have a discussion. Anyways, grab a snack and get ready, this is going to be quite the journey. Also like the video and I will consider you to be one of the heroes. We all know how tragic and depressing the world of Dark Souls is, but what if I told you that Dark Souls has a good ending? It is not about starting another Age of Fire or accepting the Age of Hollows. No, the franchise genuinely had a good ending. It all ties down to a single slave knight, living through the Age of Ancients all the way to the end of time. Back in the war against dragons, Gwyn forced humans to fight against them, and later he cursed pygmies with Darksign, exiled some to the end of the world, killed others and kept some of them as slaves. Gale was one of the slaves who fought many battles for Honor Londo. Slaves marked with the Darksign could never relieve their duty. Even if they went hollow or their bodies stopped functioning, they would still serve as meat shields. When the Age of Fire came to an end, Gwyn burned himself to kindle the fire once again, and Kingdom was in chaos. But eventually, Honor Londo took the control again. With the entire world united under the Gwyn's rule, there were no more battles, and the Way of the White had no use for slave knights anymore. Gale broke out of his cycle of slavery and earned his freedom. After fighting battles for ages, he was finally free for the first time in his life. So he sought refuge in the painted world of Ariandel, along with others who had nowhere else to go. In the painting, Gale had peace for the first time in his life. He eventually met the painter and became a parental figure to her. At one point, Sister Frida also arrived at the painting. She was an unkindled one who failed to link the first flame. After her failure, she moved to the painted world of Ariandel, and just like Priscilla protected her own painting, Frida also swore to protect and help the inhabitants of the painted world of Ariandel. Similar to the outer world though, paintings also have a cycle of life. Over time, paintings grow colder and they start rotting. At the end of each cycle, Father Ariandel would burn the rot away with his blood and cleanse the entirety of it. However, Frida had her own plans. She believed that a slowly decaying world would become a better outcome for the painting. She stopped the flames of Ariandel. Corvian knights started killing everyone who opposed Frida. She unknowingly pushed the painted world into a chaos and corruption. But there was still hope. A prophecy in the painting said, when the ashes would become two, their flame would return to burn the rot away. So Gale escaped the painted world to find allies in hopes of saving his world. After traveling through kingdoms, Gale found himself in the Cleansing Chapel. He remained there to pray his goddess Keita. There he also met the Ashen One and pulled him into the painting. He fulfilled the prophecy and brought two ashes against each other. Gale helped the Ashen One in his fight against Sister Frida. With Frida defeated, painted world of Ariandel was saved, and it was once again burning the rot away. Ashen One, along with Gale and the painter, saved the painting, but there was still more to do. It was not over. Painter wished to create a new world where everyone could live happily away from the dying world outside. To form the perfect world, away from the dangers of Age of Fire, Painter needed primordial Lord Souls of pygmies. Gale went on a mission to save the world. But he was an ordinary human. His body was no match for the Lord's, his soul was nothing more than a regular one. Even though his body couldn't handle the Dark Soul, he accepted this suicide mission and went on an endless journey to obtain pygmy souls for his lady's painting. Over the centuries of battles, his repeating crossbow became rusted with blood, and his greatsword was heavily chipped. After a long journey, Gale finally found the Ringed City at the end of the world. In this kingdom buried under ashes, Gale came across the Pygmy Lords. All he had to do was convince them so that they could go and create a new world along with the painter. But sadly, there was a problem. Pygmies were locked in this prison city for thousands of years. Their blood was dry and their soul grew weaker over time. Pygmies were no longer strong enough to support a new world. There was only one one way for Gale to help his lady. He had to kill pygmies and consume their souls so that they could feed on Gale's body and grow back to their former glory. Even though Gale knew he wasn't strong enough, he sacrificed himself for a better world. He killed every pygmy lord, consumed their bodies, and became one with the dark soul. Gale's dark sign grew too strong, it took over his body and drove him crazy. But even in immense pain, all Gale thought about was still his lady's painting. This is where Gale encountered the Ashen One. After a legendary fight at the end of the world, Gale was beaten, but his body fed the Dark Soul just enough to bring it back to its potential. Gale's sacrifice allowed his lady to paint a new world, away from Gwyn, away from the Age of Fire, and away from the dying world covered in ash. Started as a slave, fighting as a meat shield in his entire early life, Gale never went hollow. He saved the painted world of Ariandel, he searched for dark souls for the rest of his life, and he sacrificed himself so the others could create a new, peaceful world for themselves. Gale is a perfect tragic hero who dedicated his entire life to others. And knowing that there's no Dark Souls 4, I can assume that Painter's world never went hollow, and they finally found peace. This may come as a surprise, but not all the gods of Honor Londo were evil. Some used every bit of their power to help others. Nameless King is one of them. Gwyn's firstborn, Nameless King, was worshipped as a god of war among humans. Along with his knights, he was a devastating force in the war against dragons. While Gwyn was losing 10 of his silver knights for each dragon he could kill, Nameless King with Ornstein by his side was cutting through the dragons. His unmatched skills were a game changer in this battle. In the Age of Fire, Nameless King formed the Covenant of the Warriors of Sunlight. There he would train and raise a new generation of noble knights. He would teach his followers a variety of lightning miracles. He was loved by his followers so much that they even created a miracle in his name. He was the future heir of the throne, and for a good while he followed his father's steps. Nameless King witnessed the birth of chaos in Lost Isolate. He witnessed the total defeat Honor Londo faced against the four kings in New Londo, and he witnessed Ulasil slowly sinking into darkness. Anytime there was a threat, gods of Honor Londo found the solution in bringing total destruction to these civilizations. They destroyed New Londo, they killed everyone within Ulasil, and they killed every demon and witch they could find and catch in Lost Isolates. Blinded by their powers, the gods could no longer act sane. Nameless King was first to see the wrongs of his kin. He refused to continue the cycle of fire. After Gwyn sacrificed himself, Nameless King became the new King of Kings. He was the new God of Sun, and he had no other intention than balancing the world and fixing everything wrong with the Age of Fire. He studied the dragons for a while, and he realized dragons were already adapting to the new world. They were evolving in different ways to live together with humans. The former God of War decided he had to embrace the dragons and learn to live along with them. The idea of making peace with the former enemies was not accepted by the other gods though. They had a total control over the world, and they saw sharing it with another race as treason. Gods were furious, they stripped Nameless King of all of his titles, destroyed every single one of his shrines, and then removed his name from every book and every wall of text. Before he could bring a real peace and balance to the world, Nameless King was exiled. He disappeared without a trace, but even after losing everything, he was never forgotten by his followers. Even after many ages of fire, even after Honor Londo disappeared from the surface of the earth, Nameless King's ruined shrines attracted those who searched the blessing of God of War. He didn't give up on his dreams though. He built a safe haven hidden from Honor Londo. His right hand Ornstein, along with many of his knights who fought against the dragons in the Age of Ancients, also joined him. They made peace with the dragons, and together they built the Archdragon Peak. This safe place is what the entire world could have been. While the remaining kingdoms were ruined by Gwyn's dark sign, Nameless King's safe haven resembled a perfect balance. No one knows whether they froze Archdragon Peak in time or not, but even during the eclipse, in the worst times of Age of Hollowing, this land was never affected by the curse of Age of Fire and the Age of Hollowing. No matter what, sun always shined upon Archdragon Peak. Nameless King is a hero who could have made the world a better place, but tragically he failed in his attempts. But he still deserves a spot in this video. In Souls games, you can find a heroic character ready to sacrifice their position in the least expected places. Loretta was one of them. Wait, hold on, not that Loretta. This is about the royal knight of the Carrion family. Just like the family, she is also a skilled sorcerer and master of her own technique, along with her sorcery, which takes the shape of a great bow. She also channels Carrion sorceries. She is the personal god of the family, and during the Civil War, she defended Carrion Manor with a great success. At one point in history, Rani kills herself and transfers her body to a doll. This event relieves Loretta from her duty, but even then, even when she could simply leave, she casts a projection of herself to defend Rani before parting ways. Loretta is believed to be an albinoric, a tragic species created by human hands. Just like humans, they were seen as impure and lesser abominations. Formed by a primordial drop of dew, albinorics possess arcane power, which strengthens their connection with sorceries. But in return, their body loses its function over time. First, they lose their legs, and then eventually arcane leaves their body, ending their life cycle. Loretta is fighting on horseback due to not having control over her legs anymore. Realizing her fate at young age, Loretta goes on a journey to find meaning to her existence. After all, albinorics are not accepted by the Earth Tree, and they can never have an afterlife. Making up her mind, she knows she has to bring peace and purpose to her race. So she goes and saves and protects as many of them as possible. It is even considered that Loretta is the person who taught albinorics how to fight on wolfback with bows and arrows. In her search for home, she meets Michaela, a kind Empyrean who forms a safe haven under the Helic Tree for those who have nowhere else to go. Albinorics accept Helic Tree as their holy land. Loretta becomes the knight of the Helic Tree, and for the rest of her life she leads albinorics to Helic Tree. Sadly, there isn't a lot of lore behind Loretta's actions, and she's a minor boss in between major events in Elden Ring. But even with the limited knowledge about her, it is easy to see that she learns about her terrible fate at a young age. Instead of giving up, she masters sorceries, she goes on a journey to find a home, and she saves an entire race from a meaningless existence set to vanish without trace. She saves countless lives from the hands of villains such as Gideon Ofnir. Despite being a minor character, she is still one of the most heroic bosses in the entire game. Lands Between is not as depressing and hostile as Lordran. However, cruelty and tragedy still exists. Morgoth may even be the most tragic good guy in the entirety of Elden Ring. He is the son of Godfrey and Queen Marika, so he was blessed with the strongest bloodline Lands Between has ever seen. But just like his twin, Mohg was also cursed as an omen. Even their royal blood couldn't remove the omen from his veins. Abandoned by their mother, omens were locked in the sewers under the capital city. One of them left the sewers as a pure villain, set to destroy the world and the Golden Order, and the other one became the greatest hero of its kingdom. In their early lives, Omen children would have their horns cut out by the Golden Order. Most of them would die in the process, but a lucky few would survive, only to be locked underground for an eternity. But for the nobles, this was a different story. Nobles would get to keep their horns, but instead they would be put in shackles even further underground. So you can guess which is a worse fate. Within the Subterran Shutting Grounds, Mohg fills himself with hatred and connects with the Formless Mother. Morgoth, on the other hand, trains himself to slow down his curse, and then he seals it away within his sword. During the Shattering, twins leave the Shutting Grounds to chase the glory awaiting them. Morgoth claims one of the Great Runes and takes control of the armies as the Veiled Monarch. Leyndell becomes the main target of every demigod. Whoever takes the capital city could also take the title of Elden Lord. Leyndell's armies naturally grow thin over time. It comes to a point where Morgoth becomes the only line of defense against the invading forces. All by himself, he beats young Radahn in a fight where he is also heavily outnumbered. He defends the capital city and he kills so many champions and heroes that he piles up a mountain of corpses in front of Erdtree. Despite being an omen hated by Golden Order and everyone within Lands Between, except maybe Dung-Eater, he becomes the sole defender of the capital city and the Erdtree. Even after the Shattering, he kept ruling the city and the Golden Order in disguise. He formed an elite regiment of cavalry and he started hunting champions and heroes who threatened the existence of Erdtree. He also sailed the entrance of the Three Fingers and kept the frenzied flame away from the surface all by himself. Morgoth had all the reasons to turn his back on Golden Order. At the time of shattering, he was stronger than any other demigod, even when he was hiding his identity and powers. Unlike his brother Mohg, he didn't need to manipulate the powers of an Empyrean. He could take over the Lands Between for himself, he could create a new age and become its one and only ruler. But he chose to defend those who chained him and abandoned him. He fought against the armies all by himself just to defend the Erdtree, and even when he realized he couldn't become the next Elden Lord, he still protected the realm and the Erdtree with his life. He did so many questionable things, but he is still one of the heroes of Lands Between. Chaos and the darkness. They were the biggest fear of Gwyn. However, there's a man who conquered them both. Long after the age of Anor Londo and its gods, many kingdoms were formed. Phorasa was one of them, a mighty kingdom formed by skillful knights with heavy armors and great weapons. Among the knights of Phorasa, there was a man considered to be the god of war among its people. He would always fight in the front lines and be the first line of defense against his enemies. With his courage, strategic intelligence and unmatched skills in combat, he became the leader of his people. In his time, he discovered the gates of chaos in a frozen wasteland. Even the old gods of Anor Londo were threatened by the chaos. However, for Ivory King, chaos was just another obstacle that needed to be overcome. He decided to build a city at the gates of hell, and he aimed to tame it. Trusted by his people, Ivory King marched to the gates, secured the land, and built the city known as Eleum Lois. Great walls were built around the city with the purpose of keeping the demons within the walls. City itself was a great success. Ivory King built a cathedral and a throne room right at the gates of chaos. In the presence of Ivory King's unbreakable soul, chaos was weakening day by day. Shortly after, a lone woman arrived at the gates of Eleum Lois. It was surprising that a single person, barely clothed, could travel across the frozen lands and make it to the city. Though she was no mere human, she was one of the daughters of Manus. Just like each of the daughters of the Dark, Alsana also represented the emotions of Manus. She was the fear and sorrow. Being the merciful king he is, Ivory King accepted Alsana under his protection. But each fragment of Manus was set to destroy one great kingdom of humans. Alsana was no different. She was there to drown the entire kingdom in fear and have them leave their line of defense. But Ivory King's soul was just too powerful. His soul only grew stronger and he was giving confidence to all around him with his merciful and welcoming soul. Over time, Alsana started changing. She saw nothing but kindness from her king. Despite knowing she is the daughter of the Dark, Ivory King took her as his queen and embraced her. Alsana was the first and the only daughter who was cleansed from the unending hatred of Manus. Over time, kingdom reached its peak. Ivory King exiled anyone who could betray Eleum Lois, and then he sent his pets after them to give them a quick mercy kill in the frigid outskirts, because as you can imagine, even NPCs don't want to spend any time in that unfinished mess of a map. He then used the demon souls to create stone golems who would maintain city and defend it against the enemies. Against all odds, Ivory King tamed the chaos, turned demons into faithful soldiers, and cleansed the daughter of the Dark from her curse. But in the world of Dark Souls, every story ends with a tragedy. The Age of Fire was once again coming to an end, and just like during the first Age of Fire, witches tried to replicate the flames. Even though there isn't a clear evidence, it was believed to be the Lost Sinner, a priestess of Eleum Lois, who tried but couldn't succeed. A failed attempt was a catalyst to the rebirth of chaos. In the brink of its extinction, chaos and flames started growing again. It was felt all around the Eleum Lois. Ivory King and his knights were losing power day by day. Before his soul was entirely drained, Ivory King had to do something. He could sense something big was crawling out of the gates of hell, so he gathered his forces, he left the kingdom, along with everything he had, to Alsana, and delved into the depths of chaos. No one knows for how many ages he fought against the demons in the heart of the chaos, but knowing nothing ever came back, he was successful. He slew the monsters set to bring chaos to the world. He saved the surface, but sadly he couldn't save himself. After driving away the strongest forces of chaos, his soul was consumed by the flames, until the day bearer of the curse arrived to free his soul from chaos. Before we see the last hero on the list, let's talk about some honorable mentions. Dialos is a knight born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He turns his back on his noble blood and becomes the potentate of Jarburg. He defends the village against the poachers at the cost of his own life. Patches might even be the most misunderstood character in the Souls franchise. He hunts corrupt clerics to delay the inevitable destruction of his world, and he risks his life on many different occasions to defend people he cares about. Yura dedicates his entire life to tracking and hunting bloody fingers. He tracks down the killers and protects those who are in need of help, but sadly, after his death, his body was possessed by an immense evil power. There are more characters like Solaire, Oscar, Michela, and maybe even Gwendolyn, but would you consider them as heroes, or are they just kind souls trying to fulfill their goals and duties? Let me know what you think about them, and we may even do a part 2. Alright, let's move to the last hero on the list. Can someone still be a hero if their entire legacy is built on lies? Well, this is the story of the Abysswalker, Gwyn's greatest knight who faced auras no god or no man could ever dare to challenge. Abysswalker was one of the 4 great knights of Gwyn. Each knight would serve a different purpose. Ornstein was the dragon slayer who fought along with the Nameless King to bring devastation to dragons. Go, along with his archers, would knock the dragons out of the sky, and Kieran was Gwyn's personal assassin. She was hunting and killing anyone who dared to oppose Lord of Sunlight. And Artorias was the only lord who could fight the biggest weakness of his race. He would track and destroy those who were corrupted by Abyss. Artorias was a skilled knight with an unbreakable will. Towards the end of Gwyn's Age of Fire, there was a race for the new age. Anor Londo was training hollows in hopes of finding chosen undead who could link the fire. But gods of Anor Londo were not the only faction interested in total control over the world. Deep underground, Primordial Serpent Khot was in search of his own champion so that he could start an Age of Darkness. So, he set the eyes on a young but powerful human kingdom down beneath Anor Londo and met with its kings. There were 4 great kings blessed with Gwyn's Lord Soul. But their Dark Soul wasn't particularly powerful. Khot taught them the art of life drain, showed them the true potential of humanity, and convinced them that they were not inferior or equal to the Sun God. Khot made them believe that they were superior. He corrupted the 4 kings in no time. With the Lord Soul in their possession and the ability to drain lives from their enemies, 4 kings were more powerful than ever. They trained and corrupted the knights with life drain. They turned all the royal knights into Dark Raids. Dark Raids became the strongest force in Lordran in no time. They were unstoppable. They wouldn't rest. They wouldn't stay injured. There was no way to slow them down. And soon the 4 kings set their eyes on Anor Londo. They were going to kill the gods and start an Age of Darkness. Being weak to darkness, gods had no choice but to hide. But Artorias had other plans. Not only did he stop the Dark Raids, but he forced them to retreat. He killed many and sent many more to the depths of the abyss. His heroism was a major success, but Artorias wanted more. He formed a covenant and forged a ring that would give him the ability to traverse the abyss. He faced the 4 kings at the heart of the abyss, but the Gwyn's Lord Soul and the immense power they stole from the others made them too powerful. Artorias had to retreat, but despite his failure, forcing Dark Raids back into the chaos gave Anor Londo a chance to react. Gods were too afraid of the dark, so they ordered sorcerers to drown the entire city, killing all the inhabitants just to seal the Dark Raids and their kings. But the race for a new age was barely starting. After losing the safe option for a new age, Khot was ready to take risks, so he traveled to Ulasil, corrupted its people, and resurrected a man who could easily rival Gwyn. The issue with 4 kings was that they were blessed with Gwyn's Lord Soul. They were inferior to the Sun God, and they weren't pure. But Khot's new target, Manus, was a different story. He was the virtue pygmy, as old as Gwyn and the other lords. He had no need of Lord Souls because he possessed a Dark Soul just as powerful, just as strong. Manus corrupted the entire kingdom and deformed everything within. Once again, gods were threatened by a force greater than them. Anor Londo had no choice but to send its greatest knight against such danger. Artorias arrived at Ulasil along with his companion Sif. Unlike New Londo though, the entire kingdom of Ulasil was corrupted by the immense soul of Manus. Artorias made his way through the streets, killing every single spawn of the abyss he could find, but his race was especially weak against the dark. He could feel losing his strength as he delved deeper into the ruins, by the time he made it to the Nest of Manus, his soul was mostly drained and corrupted. But he refused to back down. If Manus left Ulasil, this would be end of the world. Knowing he didn't stand a chance against Manus, he still challenged the beast. Despite their heroic charge, Artorias and Sif faced a total defeat. The battle was lost, and Artorias had strength just enough to save only one of them. With his shield, he cast a protective barrier around Sif. His companion was saved, but he was exposed to Manus without a shield. He broke his sword arm, and he was entirely consumed by the darkness. With a little bit of his soul still left here, he returned to the city and started hunting the lesser creatures he could find. Until his last moments, he cleared the streets. When he met the Chosen Undead though, it was too late for him. In his cut dialogue, he warned the Chosen Undead, but he lost himself shortly after. He failed in his mission, and the Chosen Undead finished what he had started with the use of his silver pendant and his ring. But still, Artorias was credited for the achievements of the Chosen Undead. Though here is the catch, in that his legacy inspired his covenant. Even long after his death, Abyss Watchers followed his steps and hunted down countless armies corrupted by the Abyss. Artorias failed in his time, but the people following his ideas never let darkness grow again. So yes, the short answer is that Artorias is still the greatest hero of Lordran despite his false legacy.
Whatever thou art, stay away. Soon I will be consumed by them, by the dark. Thou art strong, human. Surely thine kind are more than pure dark. I beg of thee, the spread of the abyss, it must be stopped. Ah, Sif, there you are. All of you, forgive me. For I have availed you nothing.